This is the Tree of Life, Season 25, Chapter 3. In this episode, we will be talking about consensus and infinite recursion. To reiterate, sequential substitution events. Under hierarchical priority, negation leads to the compelling of acquiescence. The hierarchy determines the context length between the substitutionary impulses within the transitionary analog structure. By managing this context length, hierarchies prevent lower-ranked individuals from altering consensus. This restriction on context length prevents a person from experiencing infinite recursion and altering consensus. Hierarchies thus compel acquiescence to protect a consensus, which is favorable to those higher in the hierarchy. By determining the context length, these hierarchies also restrict lower-ranked individuals to specific and limited choices between contextually dialectical sets. This makes their behavior predictable within a certain range. Hierarchy is the power to frame the dialectical degeneration. When the context length reaches longer than a two-step dialectical degeneration, the result is infinite recursion. Infinite recursion involves a top path, called path parsimony, the shortest path, and an infinite number of increasingly convoluted paths descending from that path, each with their own individual negation. Each of those paths represents a separate nested substitution event. Infinite recursion is the manner by which the analog transitionary structure, created at the conclusion of reverse substitution, becomes digital again, through the transformation of the negated impulse into the not set of the finally affirmed impulse in the last digital structure. Since each convoluted descending path possesses a distinct arrow of time within a substitution event, as you descend down these paths, you would see greater and greater time passing within them. Thus, the higher the path, the earlier the version of the subject. The lower the path, the older the version of the subject. Since infinite recursion extends from individual subjects, it is possible that the entirety of a life might occur within a convoluted path of infinite recursion. Thus, this author may be merely within a longer path of recursion of his father and mother, and so on and so forth. Thus, within these bubble universes, an entirely possible set of experiences could exist in parallel to that outside the substitution event, foretelling the toils and tribulations of a subject. In other words, I might be living within a convoluted path corresponding to infinite recursion of my father or mother. The year beyond the bubble universe could still be the year of my conception. Now this has implications. For no human being lives forever. This means that at some point that convoluted path will extend beyond path parsimony, my father or mother's path in the year of conception. Thus, context length is in some way a way for the subject within the top path to sever the recursion of another at the limits of their lifespan. Likewise, since the same lesson applies to subsequent offspring, it may well be that my child is limited by my lifespan in recursion, and so on and so forth. Thus, attempts to alter the context length may have an impact on the potential paths of my descendants to a potentially infinite degree. Since we see that parallel substitution events can permit crossover between divergent paths, paths that diverged sometime in the past, it might be possible for these distinct pathways to impact each other in the manner of dialectical degeneration. From this we can see that determining consensus is as much about limiting the recursion of those conceived within our convoluted paths. In other words, in every moment during a substitution event, there are manifold yous, your manifold children, parallel parents, all fighting to shape consensus by imposing on the choices we make. That's the end of the podcast for today.